After my 2-week stint in Tahoe, I was ready to set off on my own for my first destination, Redding, California. The 4-hour drive was a nice one, but I found myself eager to check out the co-working spot in Redding that I'd be using for the upcoming week. Since I have to be on a conference call at 6 a.m. during every weekday, making sure that I'm familiar with my weekly co-working arrangement is absolutely critical. Based on the limited co-working spots available, I was really only left with one option while in Redding, a place called Drop-In. They pride themselves on flexibility, and I found this extremely useful because I'd only be in Redding for a week, and they had a 1-week subscription available. Once I became familiar with Drop-In, I then headed to my Airbnb where I had reserved a private room in a house in the suburbs. I know what you're thinking. What's the point of having a bed in the back of my car if I'm just going to be using Airbnbs? Well, sit tight for a moment because we're going to be covering that topic later in this episode. The room at the Airbnb looked really nice, and the family seemed friendly. The room was immaculate, and the house's air conditioning helped provide shelter from the hot weather, which could reach 105 degrees Fahrenheit during the afternoon. I called it a night and headed to bed. I made my 6 a.m. Monday meeting without an issue, and more or less twiddled my thumbs for a few hours, while a new project I was working on lagged at providing me with work to do. This had already been a recurring theme for a couple of weeks as the project was just getting off the ground, and it wasn't like I was complaining. After all, I was getting paid whether I did work or not. With all the great outdoors activities to do in the vicinity, I decided to take advantage of the opportunity and ask for Tuesday off from work. Alright, so it's Monday night and I'm thinking that I'm going to head to Lassen Peak to get some sleep around the trailhead and then try hiking up as soon as I wake up in the morning. Now my reasoning for that is that during the weekends it's supposed to get pretty busy and it's August, so it's probably peak season, so I figure if I go during a weekday maybe I can get less people, and if I go to sleep near the trailhead, I'll probably sleep in the back of my car. Then by the time I wake up, if it's early enough, I might be the first one on the trail, or at least one of the first people on the trail, which will be nice because if I'm trying to get footage, I definitely prefer there being fewer people. One of the reasons I'm hiking is to get a good glimpse of nature, not really, I'm not trying to get a lot of footage or even experiences around a ton of other people. So hopefully it's not too crowded, but we'll find out as soon as we wake up in the morning. I got about an hour and a half to 2-hour drive in front of me, so hopefully I get there, not too late, right? Because I don't want to lose my way, and there's probably not much cell service out there. So we're going. Camping out at the Lassen Peak trailhead was a great choice. I can't remember the last time I saw the stars in the sky so clearly. This idea was quickly becoming my favorite part of hiking. Although there were only a few cars in the parking lot at night, once I woke up I started seeing cars of other hikers starting to trickle in. It was time to get going. The trail is a well-maintained path 2.5 miles up to the summit, and all trails rates it as difficult. I, personally, didn't find it very difficult, especially with the short distance, and enjoyed the little info markers along the way giving Lassen Peak's history. The mountain is at the very south end of the Cascade Range, a group of volcanoes, some still active, that spans along the Pacific Northwest and is part of the larger Ring of Fire. In 1915, Lassen Peak erupted, and some of the info markers show images from that eruption. Between Lassen Peak and Mount St. Helens, it's kind of crazy to think that the Cascade Range saw 2 eruptions during the 20th century. Because I don't usually think of the Cascade Range as a group of active volcanoes, so this info was new to me. Lassen Peak's volcanic makeup becomes more apparent when you compare the type of surface that you're hiking on. It appears to be made up mostly of pumice, cooled lava, versus the overabundance of granite that you typically see while hiking in the Sierra Nevadas. The pumice can be very uneven and catches on the rubber bottoms of your hiking boots, creating a small risk of injury if one is not careful. While the view at the top was decent, I did find the relative lack of trees and wildlife toward the top of the hike to be unfortunate.
But perhaps Lassen Peak's highlight is its volcanic history, and not necessarily its flora and fauna. It was fun chatting with some of the other hikers at the peak, but I had heard about another even more interesting feature of the area, a hot springs, which is exciting because I've never really seen a hot springs in person before. So once I got a good view from Lassen's peak, I headed back down to check it out.
Well, that was fun. Kinda easy, actually. Expecting it to be harder. But we're gonna check out Bumpass Hell next. Guess that's some sulfur hot springs of some sorts. Not too far from here.
By the time I got back down to my car, the parking lot had really started filling up and I headed just a few minutes away to Bumpass Hot Springs. The parking situation there was even worse, but I was lucky enough to find a spot and started heading down the short hike to the hot springs. You can tell when you're about to get to the hot springs because you will get hit by an overwhelming sulfuric smell, like rotten eggs.
Getting a little stinky.
Although I've seen small quote-unquote hot springs before, they typically haven't been much more than a small amount of warm water trickling out of the ground. Bumpass Hot Springs, also known as Bumpass Hell, put those ones to shame. The area consists of several vents where you can see mud bubbling as clouds of gas get released into the air, giving the area its signature smell. The area immediately surrounding each of these vents is devoid of plants since the ground makes it an inhospitable environment for plants to grow their roots. It looks like a barren wasteland, which gives it a very cool atmosphere. Apparently, the American who popularized the hot springs in the 1860s, Kendall Bumpass, once was showing the attraction to a local reporter when one of his legs fell through the ground and into the scalding hot water. He screamed out expletives from the pain and would end up having to get his leg amputated. And that's how the hot springs was given its informal name, Bumpass Hell. His leg may have not survived the incident, but his name would live on long past his death. I noticed that there are many landmarks in the area with names like Hell and Devil, which must be a result of the relatively religious nature of the 1800s, when many of the landmarks were being discovered by the westward exploring Americans. It should go without saying that trying to touch the boiling water is a bad idea, and there are signs stating as such. But I had to figure out how warm the water was, but only in one of the areas far enough away from the vents.
I'm touching it. Nice and warm. It's like bath water. Wonder if my hand's gonna be stinky now.
With a good hike and hot spring experience under my belt, I decided to call it a day and head back to Redding. On the way out, I performed my post-hike ritual of jumping into some fresh water. With the lake water so clear, how could I resist? It had been an amazing day exploring Lassen Peak and the surrounding area, but I was going to have to wake up early in the morning the next day for work again. But never fear, the weekend would soon arrive and my next adventure was right around the corner. Hi guys, it's Kylan here. Just wanted to thank you for making it all the way through the first real episode of this series. Just a quick side note, a production note. You will notice that some of the camera footage for this episode was a bit shaky. I do want you to know that I am aware of that and I am working on improving that, partially by just practicing better video taking habits and also by using some better equipment in the future. So I do want you to know that the footage should get more steady in the future. And other than that, if you like this episode, please hit the like button. And if you want to join me on the rest of this adventure, feel free to hit that subscribe button. Thank you.